So we're talking about the dark side of a millionaire. We're talking about what causes people to not do wealth well. We've already said one of those things is that they hate their jobs. We've already said another thing is just not being good with money, not being a solid financial decision maker. This next one, and this is something we've seen, again, manifest in millionaires that are unhappy, that are unfulfilled, that money did not solve the problem they thought it was going to solve. Those millionaires are not generous.
I was shocked by this one too. I gotta tell you, Daniel and I don't come to discussions or debates very often, but this show did kind of, I was like, that's not true. Daniel, go check that again. And then sure enough, here's what I think is interesting. We have this slide, and like I said, I went back with questions on this because Daniel found that Americans making $30,000 or less, they give 6.6% of their income to charity.
What I think is crazy is we know that the average savings rate in this country is like it's right 4 or 5% right now. You know, it went as high as 7% during the pandemic. So Americans under 30K are giving about the national average savings rate. That's interesting, right? Like there's something there to be noted.
Well, the counterpoint to this, because you hear 6.6 and you're like, well, okay, well, people with higher incomes, I'm sure that they're going to at least match. Mm-hmm. And if they don't match, because I could see the argument, like, well, $30,000, 6% of that, you know, so these people are giving right under $2,000. I mean, if a person's making $100,000 and they're giving, you know, $8,000 a year, yes, it's you know, it's right at what these people are doing, or even $6,000. But what we found is that people who have higher incomes actually are only giving 0.9% of their income. Mm-hmm. So what if you just did the math on this? The people making less than $30,000 are giving right under $2,000. The people making $100,000 or more were giving right at less than $1,000. That's sad.
Now, hear us out. I want to be clear because I want to make sure it doesn't sound like we are saying, "Oh, well, wealthy people are not generous." That's not what we're suggesting. There are a number of wealthy people out there that are incredibly generous. What we are saying is that not being generous could lead to a decrease in happiness. It could lead to not finding fulfillment. If you're finding your fulfillment in the dollars that are stacking, perhaps there is more to the equation. Perhaps there is something else that you may ought to be thinking about. We're going to talk about in a moment. It's not just money. It's not just how big of a check am I writing.
Well, yeah, I mean, because I am the last person that wants to just beat up on successful people because, I mean, that's who we work with. That's who we reside in that camp. And I don't like it. I already feel like there's so many things out there that are anti-success that I don't want to pile on. But when I see this about generosity, it does frustrate me, especially when, like you just set up, Bo, if you're generous, where does this saying, it's better to give than to receive? Mm-hmm. I know that sounds great, and it's something we tell our kids around the holidays and so forth. But here's the actual data on this, is that there's a huge study, over 200,000 people, on the impacts of generosity. Mm-hmm. And what it found out was that people who gave generously were 93%. They showed positive impacts to their happiness and just a lot of positive benefits to actually making this a deliberate action.
Now, again, I cannot stress this enough. This is not just, okay, how much money am I giving away? How much of the checks am I giving away? But if you are someone who exists, who has a unique skill, a unique knowledge, a unique talent, and by the way, that's all of us, there are probably people in your life that could benefit from your generosity. Maybe generosity, just talking with a coworker. Hey, let me show you how I did this. Maybe it's talking to a younger person, helping share wisdom with them. Maybe it's helping an older person. There are ways that you can be generous, ways that you can pour into the lives of other people. And I think you will be amazed that when you start doing that, when you start recognizing those opportunities, not only will it make you feel better, you will get an actual tactile feel better, you'll actually start appreciating what you have more. You'll start recognizing, man, things are pretty good. I'm not as dissatisfied. I'm not as unhappy. I don't feel as empty. I do feel like I've got purpose and worth, and there's a reason why I'm doing the things that I'm doing every day.
Well, here's what I think: there is a direct express lane between happiness and generosity. We already shared that. That's what the research showed. But the reason why, if you're asking this, if you're a skeptic, is I have found the more you receive, it's all about, did you make this goal of being wealthy to where it's all consuming, where you lost yourself? I think if you can be selfless and actually be generous, it actually still lets you be a good steward with the resources, but also know who you are, what makes you tick. You're just better with money because it lets you tie into what's your why, what's your legacy, what makes you work well with and the relationship around you in the world. This is why being generous, because instead of making it all consuming, I'm building so I can have more, it lets you be purposeful and get outside of the money so you can actually think outside of being selfless. And I think that makes you just a better human too.